All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode here at Whiteboard Medicine. We appreciate you checking it out. Today is going to be another mechanical ventilation video, particularly focusing on a type of desynchrony known as ineffective triggering. This was a request by some of you all, so we certainly appreciate requests. Hopefully we live up to what the origin of the request was, and let us know if there's other requests. We're always trying to do anything we can to improve everybody's experience. We'll be talking about what ineffective triggering is. We'll be talking about what causes it, waveform analysis, how to approach it, how to fix it, all that good stuff. A couple plugs quickly. For those of you new to the channel or the platform, this is channel Whiteboard Medicine. We got a podcast, we got a YouTube channel, we got a YouTube members, Patreon page, weekly newsletter, all that good stuff. We actually upload all the study guides and practice questions to both our YouTube members as well as Patreon members. We'll link all that in this episode's description if you have an interest in checking this out, either for practice questions or the study guides. And we have a whole series on mechanical ventilation, guys. We probably got 10 videos out there and all sorts of stuff, 10 videos and podcasts. So we'll link the playlist to those in this video description as well. And if you're interested in a newsletter too, weekly newsletter, it's public health and emerging infectious disease primarily, but it's totally free. You can obviously unsubscribe whenever you want to. So low risk in our mind, and hopefully it brings some decent content. We got I think close to 500 people on there by now. It's relatively new, so we'd love for more people to join. And then last thing, as always, not intended to be acted upon as medical advice. None of the things you hear. Full disclaimer at the end of the episode, also in the episode description, as always needs to be said. Nonetheless, enough with the plugs. Let's dive in. Mechanical ventilation advanced, desynchrony, ineffective triggering. So what is ventilator desynchrony? Probably a good first thing just to make sure we're all starting on the same page. So ventilator desynchrony occurs when the patient's respiratory efforts are not appropriately matched by the ventilator. The ventilator is a machine, and as a machine, we have to set it to provide each breath in a certain way, and there's limitations to that way. And the way in which it's providing that breath may not be how the patient wants to receive that breath, whether it's because of pressure or volume or flow of that breath can sometimes cause issues. So this can result in all the things we've seen: increased work of breathing, patient discomfort, sedation needs, because sometimes folks, sedate patients to make them more synchronous, and then potentially worse outcomes too. All these things can lead to prolonged ventilatory times or even ventilator-induced lung injury, all that kind of stuff. What about ineffective triggering specifically? Definition and core concept. So ineffective triggering happens when the patient tries to initiate a breath. They initiate an inspiratory effort, but that actually fails to trigger a ventilator-assisted breath. So the patient wants to inhale, but the ventilator doesn't see it. It doesn't pick it up, so it doesn't give a breath. And as a result, the patient's effort's wasted. They tried to take a breath and no breath was given. And to understand this a little bit, just to go back a notch, it helps to understand how ventilators give breath. So, the vast majority of ventilator settings are AC, assist control. And this could be AC-VC, volume control, AC-PC, pressure control. But this AC, this assist control, is important because what this means is that the ventilator is always watching for when the patient tries to take a breath. And when the patient tries to take a breath, the ventilator detects it and then it gives a breath. Okay? So it is assisting the patient. The old school way was that you would just, the ventilator would just give 20 breaths, if that's what you set it on, per minute, and that, didn't matter if the patient was trying to take a breath or not trying to take a breath, and you can imagine that's really uncomfortable. So the newer models, for as long as I've known, but I haven't been in the world that long, as long as some of you probably, but they try to sync up when they give a breath to when the patient tries to take a breath. So because of that, there's certain parameters that are set to help the ventilator know when the patient's trying to take a breath. And when those parameters aren't met, that patient tried to take a breath, the ventilator didn't notice, and as such, it did not give a breath, so then it was a wasted effort. It can be really uncomfortable for patients. So that's ineffective triggering, when the patient tries to take a breath in, but the ventilator doesn't recognize it, so it does not give a breath. There is an ineffective trigger. So physiology and pathophysiology of this. Well, normal triggering, as we said, ventilators detect a breath based on a couple different things. One of those things can be a pressure trigger, and one can be a flow trigger. You set this on the ventilator. The pressure trigger is when there's a drop in airway pressure, usually 1 to 2 centimeters below the baseline. Again, this is set on the ventilator because you have a patient who's got a endotracheal tube in their mouth, into their trachea, attached to the ventilator. So this is a closed circuit. So when the patient tries to breathe in, it creates a negative pressure in that circuit, right? You try to take a breath in, that's going to create negative pressure. And that negative pressure, if you have a pressure trigger, drops the airway pressure, and then that prompts the ventilator to be like, hey, they're trying to take a breath, and then they give a breath. You also can have the ventilator set to be a flow trigger though. And this is if there's a drop in flow, usually 1 to 3 liters per minute below baseline, that will then trigger a breath. Either one of these triggers work. They both work totally fine, pressure trigger or flow trigger, but they are settings on the ventilator, and you can change how robust this trigger is. You can increase or decrease the pressure or flow trigger, at least to some degree, for different kind of clinical indications that we'll talk about. So why does it fail then? Well, ineffective triggering occurs when the patient effort is too weak to meet the trigger threshold. That's one of the times, right? If you've set a pressure trigger at 2 centimeters below baseline, but the patient can only mobilize 1 centimeter of kind of negative airway pressure because they're too weak, that won't trigger because it won't meet the threshold that you set, which was 2 centimeters below baseline of pressure. Auto-PEEP, we have a whole bunch of videos out there on auto-PEEP, also known as breath stacking. When auto-PEEP happens, essentially what's happening is you have not provided enough expiratory time, which means that every breath the ventilator is giving, the patient did not fully exhale the entirety of their last breath. So then you start building up extra air in the lungs because each breath the patient is exhaling only, choose whatever you want, 90% of the air. So 10% of it's still in the lungs when the next breath's given, and that compounds over time. And this creates something called intrinsic PEEP. PEEP is positive and expiratory pressure. And, again, check out those other episodes on Auto-PEEP because this is a really complex, really important, but really complex topic. So we're not going to do its justice in this video alone. Video or podcast if you're listening. We've been a YouTube channel for so much longer than a podcast that we sometimes still say video. But yes, this episode, either podcast or YouTube. But what Auto-PEEP does is it generates intrinsic PEEP. PEEP is positive and expiratory pressure. And PEEP is something you set. Many people are probably familiar with PEEP. But intrinsic PEEP happens when you get breath stacking because all that air building up in the lungs creates pressure. And that pressure then, when you try to take a breath, so we're just going to make this up. Let's say the PEEP is set at 5, but I did a bad job in my ventilator settings and I'm not paying attention, so auto-PEEP is developing. And let's say that auto-PEEP creates an intrinsic PEEP, we'll just say I-PEEP of, let's just make it so it's terrible at 10, okay? So the PEEP set at 5, but intrinsic PEEP has built up from breath stacking to 10, so there's actually 15 of PEEP. But my pressure trigger is 1 to 2 centimeters below the baseline being 5. So my pressure trigger, you need to get to a PEEP of 3 to trigger a breath. Well, when I was at a PEEP of 5, that was probably no big deal, right? Someone tries to breathe in, it drops the PEEP from 5 down to 3, and the ventilator says, hey, they want a breath, give it to them. But now I have all this intrinsic PEEP, and now my effective PEEP is actually 15. So that patient, instead of going from 5 to 3 has to go from 15 to 3, which means instead of just -2 pressure from 5 to 3, they actually have to get -12 pressure. Obviously a much harder thing to do. So auto-PEEP creating intrinsic PEEP can lead to ineffective triggering. Ventilator settings are too insensitive. You essentially just set your triggers too high. That can lead to ineffective triggering. You need to be a little more liberal, a little easier going on your either flow or pressure trigger. And then muscle weakness or sedation paralysis obviously reduces effort and can lead to ineffective triggering. So really, a lot of these are, I think the two categories. One is patient-centric, and that is the patient is too weak, or there's a kind of too much sedation. And the other ones are ventilator-centric, aka auto-PEEP is building up, or the ventilator settings are too insensitive from where their triggers are set, either pressure or flow trigger. So waveform recognition. So ineffective triggering can be seen on the waveforms or scalars. For those unfamiliar with scalars, we've had a whole bunch of episodes on that too. Again, linked in that mechanical ventilation playlist in the description. Definitely check those out if you're interested. But there's 3. We're going to assume that the patient is in the volume control mode, AC/VC. There's 2 scalars to look at when it comes to ineffective triggering. One is the pressure time scalar, and the other is the flow time scalar. To make this easier, we're going to focus on the pressure time scalar. And the pressure time scalar in volume control usually looks like this. It starts not at 0 because this is your PEEP, okay? And then a breath is given and the pressure goes up, gets to the peak inspiratory pressure and comes back down. If a patient triggers a breath, you'll usually see the slight negative dip, right? Because that breath created negative pressure, and that actually triggers the ventilator to then give this breath, right? So this is a patient-triggered breath when you see this dip. Without the dip, this is a ventilator-given breath. With ineffective triggering, what you'll see is you'll see this dip, but it won't trigger a breath, right? See that? So you see the dip, but no breath is given. You'll get this negative deflection in the pressure scaler without a subsequent breath being given. So on the ventilator screen, you'll see a small deflection, but no subsequent breath being given following that deflection. That is ineffective triggering. Seen as a small negative blip in pressure. You'll see a similar blip in the flow scaler as well. Not a lot of people use esophageal pressure monitoring or diaphragmatic EMG, but there is certain ways you can identify this if you have those monitoring tactics too. If you see this, you should really think about why it's happening, which we'll talk more about next. So just examples to drive the point home on scalars. If you are looking at the flow scalar, you'll see a brief dip with no breath following. If you're looking at the pressure scalar, you'll see that small negative deflection without a breath following. There's no volume delivered despite patient effort, obviously, because no breath was given. Causes, if we dive more into it, as we mentioned, patient-related causes, weak effort from fatigue, neuromuscular disease, sedation, too high a respiratory rate, so they're tired, can all lead to ineffective triggering because they can't mobilize that flow or pressure to trigger the ventilator. Ventilator-related causes, insensitive trigger settings, so you need to make the pressure or flow trigger less stringent. Or inappropriate modes. We mentioned how all modes are usually, shouldn't say that, but most modes are usually assist control, but not all of them are. So if you're in a controlled mode that is not assist control, that might also lead to ineffective triggering because these patients' modes don't have the same triggering modalities as assist control does. Lung mechanics, such as Auto-PEEP, right, creating that intrinsic PEEP, which then leads to patients' inability to overcome that intrinsic PEEP to get a breath triggered. And then asynchrony, often asynchrony things coexist. So if there's other desynchrony like double triggering or reverse triggering, these in general can lead to changes in kind of intrinsic PEEP and volumes delivered and all that, and all these can lead to ineffective triggering too. So desynchronies often come together. We've talked about double triggering and reverse triggering and flow starvation on the channel before. Another shout out for that playlist of mechanical ventilation linked in the description. Management strategies. So these are related to the causes, which makes sense. The first is going to be improve the trigger sensitivity. Easy. Either lower the flow or the pressure trigger threshold. So if it was flow, instead of 3 liters per minute, decrease it to 1 liter per minute. If it's pressure, instead of 2 below the baseline, make it 1 below the baseline. So just change the trigger, right? Make it more sensitive. Fix Auto-PEEP. This is super important. Again, we've talked about Auto-PEEP a bunch of times. We're not going to dive into it here. So definitely check out those other episodes. But things like decreasing respiratory rate, increasing flow, decreasing the I/E ratio, decreasing tidal volume, all these things help overcome Auto-PEEP. Adjust the mode if you are in a weird mode. Hopefully everyone is using AC assist control modes, but if you are not, adjusting the mode can help. Optimize sedation. If the patient is super deeply sedated and having ineffective triggering, can you lighten their sedation, right? Too deep suppresses their respiratory effort. So see if you can lighten it. Sometimes that will fix ineffective triggering. And then if you have advanced monitoring tools, these can be helpful in detecting ineffective triggering and its causes. So esophageal pressure monitoring, diaphragmatic electrical activity. We don't tend to use these devices, but they are out there and some people do use them. So from a clinical standpoint, just to finish things up, ineffective triggering can increase the work of breathing. Patient is trying to take a breath but receives no assistance. It can increase the number of ventilator days because poor synchrony prolongs weaning. Sometimes this leads to increased sedation because people try to sedate the desynchrony away. And then it decreases patient comfort, certainly. So there are some significant clinical impacts of ineffective triggering. In summary, look at the waveforms. Small pressure dips or flow dips without a breath being delivered suggest ineffective triggering. Think about common causes, both patient-centric, weak, too sedated, or ventilator-centric. Triggers are not appropriate, or there's Auto-PEEP. Think about fixes. Obviously, get rid of Auto-PEEP if it's there, increase the trigger sensitivity, lighten sedation, and then know that there is risk of ineffective triggering that can lead to worsening ventilator desynchrony, delaying ventilator liberation, decreasing patient comfort, all that good stuff. All right, hopefully that was helpful. Let us know what thoughts, comments, questions you have. If you want to check out this study guide, again, it will be posted in our YouTube members as well as Patreon members. And if you have an interest in podcasts or YouTube videos, we'll have all that linked. And then, again, we have that weekly newsletter, so a bunch of shout outs. We appreciate you all. Stay well, keep learning. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, and welcome to Whiteboard Medicine. We appreciate you checking out the video. Here at Whiteboard Medicine, our goal is to create medical education content for all types of interested learners. That includes videos, practice questions, study resources, and much more. We would love for you to join our community by subscribing, hit that bell button. We're also working to build a high-yield Patreon page. It's going to be full of practice questions, video outlines, notes, commercial-free content, and much more.
None of these videos are intended to be acted upon as medical advice. Please pause the video here and read this disclaimer in its entirety before moving on.